Let me start with something controversial. We only need change management because execution is broken. Now, that's not an insult, it's a diagnosis. Because if execution actually worked, if strategy was clear, grounded, and resourced, we would not need an entire industry dedicated to convincing people to go along with it. And yet, here we are. So before we ask why people resist change, we need to ask a harder question. What kind of change are we actually creating? Because there's change that comes from growth and there's change that comes from cleanup. Most change management exists because we're cleaning up after execution that was never disciplined to begin with. Here's the assumption most organizations start with. People resist change. I don't buy that. What people resist is confusion. They resist chaos. They resist constant pivots and moving targets. When execution lacks clarity, people cling to what's familiar, not because they're stubborn, but because familiarity feels safer than the mess we're asking them to step into. But then leadership labels that hesitation as resistance. That label's convenient, but it's wrong. Because resistance is not a personality trait. It's a rational response to poorly designed execution. Let me slow this down with a moment most leaders will recognize. Picture a leader in the middle of announcing a major initiative. The strategy is approved, the deck looks great, the timeline's locked, and the pressure's mounting. Then, in the middle of the announcement, someone raises a concern, not an objection, a dependency, staffing, timing, capability, energy. And the leader thinks, we'll deal with that later. That moment right there is where resistance is born. Not in the team, but in how decisions are made. From that point on, execution becomes an act of persuasion instead of an act of leadership. And change management gets called into self-certainty that doesn't exist. Look, engagement is not a communication problem. This is where we need to be honest. Most change management efforts try to shortcut engagement. They focus on emails, town halls, manager toolkits, communication plans. I have watched organizations pour months into messaging, only to see people nod politely and then quietly return to their old ways of working. Not because they didn't understand the message, but because nothing about the actual execution built ownership or confidence. Communication-heavy organizations talk constantly. Execution-light organizations explain constantly. High-performing organizations do neither. They design work that explains itself. They set up the team to make great decisions even when senior leaders are not in the room. Engagement doesn't happen because someone managed the messaging. Engagement happens when execution itself is designed to bring people along. That's not an HR problem. That is an executive one. So here is where most strategies go off the rails. The strategy itself is not ready to execute. You can wrap it in messaging. You can hire the best change consultants in the world. It will not matter. I saw this clearly at a tech company rolling out a classic land and expand strategy. On paper, it was elegant. In reality, staffing assumptions were wrong. Training was incomplete. Timelines were fantasy. The plan assumed assets that did not exist. Once this was surfaced, leadership did what many teams do under pressure. They launched anyway. Cue the heroic effort. Last-minute fixes, overhauls to onboarding, recruitment and compensation gymnastics, enablement rework, and the results were predictable. Waste went up. Revenue targets were missed. Frustration skyrocketed. Executive credibility took a major hit. Change management didn't save that strategy. It amplified the damage by selling commitment to a vision that wasn't viable yet. This is why I use Peter, P-T-E-R, people, time, energy, resources. Before you launch anything, you test the strategy by mapping every dependency across those 4 dimensions. And this is where leaders often lie to themselves. In terms of people, we tell ourselves we'll hire as we go. but do we have the access we need to the right talent and enough of it to fill every role? In terms of time, we tell ourselves that we will make it up later. But have we factored in delays and mistakes? And are we only managing the launch timeline or the actual timeline to deliver results? In terms of energy, we tell ourselves that this is temporary. But do we truly understand how people will feel, how much energy this work will take in order to deliver high performance? And in terms of resources, we tell ourselves that, we'll reallocate it as needed. But have we actually secured the money, equipment, space, and data that everyone will need for this work? If those dependencies are not real, secured, and visible, change management will not save you. It will make things worse. Because now, instead of coming across as communicating, you're coming across as scamming, selling confidence in a plan that was never going to work. Execution and change management cannot fix a strategy that was not ready to be launched. Assuming the strategy is sound, let me give you the secret to where engagement actually comes from: clarity and empowerment. People do not engage when success is unclear. People do not engage when expectations are not honest. People do not engage when they're held accountable without being equipped. Clarity answers, what does good actually look like? Empowerment answers, do I have what I need to get there? When either of those is missing, engagement collapses. Not because people don't care, but because they don't trust the strategy they're being asked to follow. Clarity and empowerment are not add-ons. They are prerequisites. So let me pause here. If any of this feels uncomfortable, that's actually not a problem. It usually means you care. That's a good thing. But now, the question is not whether your teams can handle change. The question becomes whether your execution gives them a reason to trust it. Because when people trust execution, resistance disappears. Here's the punchline. When execution works, change manages itself. People stop resisting because there's nothing to resist. They have clarity, they have ownership, they have resources. The organizations that understand this stop bolting on change management as damage control. They build execution disciplines that bring people along so effectively that resistance fades on its own. So here is the real choice for leaders like you. You can keep patching the same execution problems with the same change tools, or you can fix how execution works in the first place. Every additional layer of change management is a signal. Not that people are resisting, but that leadership is compensating. Maybe, just maybe, it's not about change at all. Maybe it's about execution. I want to open this dialogue, especially with leaders who are actually accountable for execution, operational leaders, business leaders, people in the arena. Please tell me, what do you think? If this hits home, I've got something more for you. You can check out a free preview of my masterclass on strategic execution. It'll show you how to cut through the noise, get to the real reasons execution breaks down, and ultimately, what to do about it. I'll walk you through a clear, proven framework that actually works. These are genuine best practices and strategies that will stop the grind and get your team thriving. Find the link in the notes section and take a moment now to invest in yourself. Holo mua. Onward and upward.